Hi there. I appreciate the introduction. Thank you. So I'm really excited about the way that technology can improve how people learn. I think that the advent of personalized education and using technology to help people learn might be as important as the invention of the printing press in helping to democratize access to education and in helping to make it more effective. And the presentation that I'm going to go through now has some of the ideas that I think will usher in this new era of digital learning and online learning, and one that can be so much more effective than what we all grew up doing. I'm going to go through some of the ideas that influenced the development of our new product, Fluencia, and then I will share with you as kind of a case study how we actually implemented these ideas in Fluencia. So let me start with, I'll start at the beginning. So where did the idea for Fluencia come from? So since 1999, my brother and his wife, they started Spanish Dict as one of the first Spanish dictionaries, and the site has grown phenomenally since then. We now are the largest Spanish reference and learning website. Last year we had 60 million visitors to the site. I checked today, Quantcast ranks us as the 274th most popular website in the US. That's ahead of USA Today, NPR. I mean, it is a huge, huge amount of people that are coming to the site. And we did a survey in 2012 at the beginning of the year, and we asked people, one, are you interested in learning Spanish? And two, are you satisfied with the products that are out there? And for the first question, we heard a resounding yes. A large majority of these people, 77%, are actually learning Spanish. And two, they're really not satisfied with the products that are out there. They're either too expensive, or they don't work, or they're too inconvenient. There's a big, big demand for something that's a better way to learn Spanish online. And we thought, man, we've got this huge audience. We've got to be able to meet this demand. And so we embarked on the path to build Fluencia. So Fluencia is an adaptive learning program to help people learn Spanish. It uses a mastery-based approach to learning. It adapts to your pace. It has all these different ideas that we'll go through. There are two things that guided our development of Fluencia, two big ideas that we wanted to focus on. One is effectiveness. So for every hour that you spend on Fluencia, we wanted to make sure that it was way more effective than an hour spent in another product or an hour spent in the classroom. And we think of effectiveness, so if you think about it, it's like the rate of learning. It's how fast are you learning given the amount of time you're spending on the product. And then the second thing is engagement. So learning Spanish is a long-term endeavor. The Foreign Services Institute, which trains our nation's diplomats, estimates that going from no Spanish to proficient at a professional level can take about 800 hours. So when people sign up to learn Spanish, we got to create a product that's engaging, something that people stick with over time. So our measure of engagement is how many hours do people put into the product and how long do they stick with it once they sign up. These are the two big factors for us, effectiveness and engagement. And I'll go through how we think about these. So on effectiveness, there are four areas. And if anybody out there designs products that want to help educate people, I encourage you to kind of go through these four areas as a checklist and think about ways you might be able to improve how you reach people with your products. So the first is planning. What are you going to teach and when? The second is the actual learning. How are you going to teach it? Third is practice. How are people going to put that knowledge into action? And then the fourth is, how are they going to retain it? And we're going to go through these and see a lot of interesting studies and stories to help flesh out these ideas and bring them to life and make them more concrete for how you might be able to do it in your own products and your own situations. Okay, so starting with planning. Planning is all about what topics are you going to teach and when. It's the scope and sequence. Here's a little slide to illustrate the importance of planning. So I would venture to say that a lot of people have been bored in their classrooms at some point in their life. I mean, think back to a class where you were bored. Everybody's had it, all right? So what was happening when you were bored? I can almost guarantee you that you weren't being challenged, that for some reason it was either too advanced or it was too easy, and you just were you were bored. So why does this occur? This occurs because the way that classrooms have typically been constructed is that you decide what you want to teach and you decide the order, and that's kind of this like lessons 1 through 10 in my block beautiful visual here. So lessons 1 through 10, you start at the beginning and you kind of march your way through. So what are the challenges with this? First, people have background knowledge. They already have some idea often about the topic that you're talking about or you're trying to teach, but this doesn't take that into account. So sometimes classrooms might place people. So you might take somebody and say, you're going to start at lesson 5 because you've already taken, let's say, Spanish 101. The issues here are that it doesn't account for the fact that you may not have covered all the stuff in lessons 1 through 5. And the second issue is that for lessons like 5 through 10, you're still very likely to be bored because stuff might be too easy or too hard. It might not be at the right level of difficulty. So when we say we have an adaptive learning program, there are two things that really make this different from the way that curriculums have been constructed for most of classroom learning. The first is that we want you to be able to skip things that you already know. So instead of doing kind of like a rough placement and just throwing you into Spanish 102, we want to be a little bit more micro and figure out what topics you already know at a more granular level so that you don't have to waste time on things that are too easy. The second thing is that we want to adapt the pace to you as you learn in real time. So when you're going through a topic, if it's evident that you're getting it really quickly, and this is exactly how it would work with a one-on-one tutor. If you were really picking something up fast, they'd move on quicker. If you were struggling with something, it would take a little bit more time. As soon as you get more than one person in a classroom, it's very, very hard to do that. But with software, it opens up the ability to individualize the education and adapt the pace while somebody's learning to the pace that they're learning it. So this is what we mean by adaptive learning in the context of planning. Okay, let's take a look at learning. So I want to start with a story of Jared Fogle. I suspect many of you have heard of Jared. In the late 90s, Jared weighed 425 pounds. He had size 62-inch waist. The weight was actually causing him to not be able to sleep at night for more than 15 minutes at a time. It was really devastating. And he decided to start eating sandwiches at Subway. He had a 6-inch turkey sub for lunch and a foot-long veggie sub for dinner with diet soda and chips at both. And over the course of a year, Jared lost 245 pounds. Wow. So this is Jared after having lost the weight. These are the pants. Jared actually now is still the spokesperson for Subway. He's kept the weight off. He's made over $10 million as a spokesperson for Subway. The pants are so famous, he went on a tour to Pants, talking about his story, and he's going to donate them to a museum when he's done. This story has amazing staying power, and I think the question that we want to ask ourselves is, how is this story, which started in 1999, still getting commercials and still memorable 14 years later? Like, what is it about this story that makes it stick with people? Because hidden in there might be something that we can learn about how people learn. Because this story is something that people learned and they remembered. And if we can take some of the ideas from it and put it into other contexts, maybe we can help people learn and remember more in other contexts. So this story is featured in this book, Made to Stick. And they call out these 6 principles that they define as really important for helping people have ideas that stick. Okay, the first one's that's very simple. So the Jared story can be boiled down as a guy was overweight, he ate sandwiches, and he lost weight. It's like so simple. It's a little unexpected. It's not often that you see someone eat at a fast food restaurant and lose 245 pounds. There's a little bit of like, whoa, unexpected, that's wow. It's very concrete. You can see the before and after images. It's got specific numbers. It's credible. The images also make you think, okay, yeah, he actually did it. He seems like a very credible guy. It's emotional. Losing that weight is a very human story. It changed his life, not just because he was a super celebrity with Subway, but also he could sleep more at night. It was like, this made a big difference in his life. And finally, it's a story, and people seem to have a special capacity to remember stories. There's this natural tendency to want to draw cause and effect and to want to link things linearly and to like follow a story that is just it's really deeply ingrained in the brain. And so if you can, teaching through stories can also often be a more helpful way to communicate ideas. There's one more thing that I want to add to this made-to-stick kind of imagery, and that's the idea that, instead of like taking an idea and like duct taping it to someone's head, I'd like to invite you to think about learning as more like Velcro. Okay, so the more that people have researched learning, the more that we find out that the way that people acquire new knowledge is by building on knowledge they already have. So Velcro has a lot of little hooks on one end, and it has a lot of little hairs on the other that try to get caught in the hooks. When you're trying to teach somebody something, think about how you can kind of stick the new knowledge into the hooks that are already in there. How can you apply it to things that are personally relevant to people? How can you build on knowledge that they already have? Try to take these ideas of simple, concrete, unexpected stories, emotional, and try to make them more personal to people, because that's what allows them to hook into the knowledge that they already have and expand what they know from there. Okay, practice. So this is Bill Gates and the Beatles. What do Bill Gates and the Beatles have in common? Bill Gates did not buy the Beatles. The thing that they have in common, among other things, I guess they both have B in Bill and the Beatles, but they were both featured in this book, The Outliers, which talks about how people achieved extraordinary success in their fields. How did people get this just unusually massive success? The theme of the book, one of the most prominent themes, is that behind every story of an expert is a story of extensive practice. So even Bill Gates, which seems like, college dropout, he was just like a young kid, no practice, very green behind the ears. Even Bill Gates, he had access to very exceptional computing power as a middle school student, and by the time he got to college, had spent thousands of hours programming, such that he was one of the experts in programming. The Beatles, we have this image of the Ed Sullivan Show where they're kind of strumming away and the crowd's going wild. It wasn't an overnight success. For the 4 years prior to that, the Beatles had played 1,200 concerts all throughout the UK and had this extraordinary amount of practice that helped them refine their music and their approach and their set and just get better at what they do. And study after study finds that experts across all domains practice extensively. So why do experts matter? Well, experts are the people that continue to do things better and better and better and better over time. So there's something that we can learn from experts in how do they get there, because basically in learning, you're trying to go from having no knowledge or no skill to having knowledge and skill. So you want to know, like, what does it take to improve? So most people, myself definitely included, have this trajectory for improvement. You have a new skill that you're trying to pick up or a new idea you're trying to pick up. You learn it really, you quickly climb up the learning curve. This is kind of like the learning curve. It's like you quickly get up the learning curve, and then what happens is you just kind of like, you get to the point where you're good enough. It's called the OK plateau, and then you just kind of flatline. You just kind of stay, like, how many people read? Okay. How many people are faster readers this year than you were last year? We got a couple, but a lot of us read all the time, and for some reason we don't get faster at it. We keep practicing. What about handwriting for the people that were better readers? How many people are better handwriters this year than last year? Your handwriting just kind of like, it plateaus. Like, you just don't seem to get better at it. So I want to show you this illustration for why that might be. Okay. For those of you in the back, I apologize. For those of you in the front, you can play along. So this is a little exercise where we're going to try to pick the real penny. Everybody here has seen pennies thousands of times. I invite you to kind of look through these and pick out the letter that you think corresponds to the ones that is the actual penny. Everybody got your guess? Okay. K. Oh, so close, right? Okay. All right, we're gonna do it again. Here it is. Pick the penny. I switched them around. You can't just go back. It's not the same. All right, here we go. H. Oh, so hard. Why so hard? Well, let's try it one more time. This time, though, before we do it, Let me point out 4 characteristics of a penny. Okay, first, it says, "In God we trust" at the top. Second, liberty is on the left. L and L, liberty on the left. Lincoln's looking to the right, and the right is where the date is. So Lincoln's looking at the date, and both are on the right. All right, let's pick the penny. C. You guys got, all right, that's good. Look at that. You learned. It's good. All right, yeah, give yourself a hand. That's good. Okay, so what we just experienced is kind of the difference between, doing something and what's called deliberative practice. So deliberative practice separates the type of practice that experts do from the type of practice that I do when I'm handwriting. And it has 3 characteristics. One is that it's focused. So you've seen pennies thousands of times, but you've never actually really focused on the differences between pennies and other, fake pennies or other coins. Second is that you get feedback. This is so critical. The difference between what happened when you saw the penny the second time and what happened when you saw the penny the third time is that you got feedback on the answer that you gave and how you can do better the next time. Feedback is so important. Third, deliberative practice is on the frontier of what's possible. So experts practice things that they're not good at, or on the things that are like so close to being what they can achieve, but just beyond reach. For most of us, it's really comfortable to practice what you already can do. I used to play guitar, and I would always play the songs I knew, and because it was fun to rock out to it. But that's not what experts do. Experts play things that are really hard, the chords that they don't know very well, or the things that are really challenging. I'll show you. This is an image that I think can drive home this point. This is Olympic gold, not gold. This is Olympic figure skater. And figure skaters, when they practice, are always practicing the jumps that are so hard for them to achieve. They're on the frontier of what's possible for them to land. And so this is like the image of practice a lot of times. It's falling and getting back up and trying it again. And doing it over and over and over for the things that you're kind of just on the cusp of being able to master. So why does this matter so much? This is actually a really, really big deal. So if you think back to the planning that we had earlier at the beginning, and we have our lessons 1 to 10, and we're going to go, for the whole class, we're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 at the same pace and the same rate. What happens is that you develop what's like Swiss cheese knowledge. You have these big holes in understanding for things where you went too fast and didn't quite grasp it. And to drive home this point, for graduating seniors from high school, so for people who actually are graduating and took the ACT put out this study of 1.8 million people who are graduating high school and took the ACT, and they said that only 26% are prepared for college in the 4 subject areas that they measure. So what's happening? All those people actually finished high school, but they have big gaps. They have this Swiss cheese knowledge in their preparation because the class kind of marched on at one pace and they didn't get time to practice the things that they weren't good at. So the model that I'll propose as a big improvement over this is one that's mastery-based and that's adapting to people. And this is what deliberative practice can do. If people are spending time in the areas where there's most opportunity for improvement, things that they don't understand, they can actually master the task and they can move on, and they don't have this Swiss cheese knowledge because they spent time on the things that they didn't understand and didn't waste time on things that they already knew. And if you think back to being bored in class, I tell you one of the biggest reasons that people get bored is because it's not challenging, and it's because it's too hard, too advanced, or it's too easy, and you're wasting time on that. But if you can focus on the frontier, it's really good use of time, and it can close these holes and avoid the Swiss cheese knowledge. Okay, retention. Why does retention matter? So we do all these things. We plan well, we learn well, we practice well. Then what happens? All right, here's a statistic that is really sobering. This book, Brain Rules, reports on a study of people's learning and finds that people forget 90% of what they learn in a classroom within 30 days. Just think about that for a second. Don't you want your money back for your education for at least like 90% of it? Because you only, and that's after 30 days. What about like a year later or 2 years later? Holy smokes, this is really sobering. So if you go through all the effort to teach something to somebody, but you don't think about retention, you're kind of selling yourself 90% short right out of the gate if you don't have a strategy for retention. Okay, so how can we address this issue? The answer goes back to this Russian infantryman who became a PhD in psychology and who, among other things, had incredible self-discipline. This fellow, Hermann Ebbinghaus, he is kind of the father of memory science. He wrote down 2,300 nonsense syllables. These are things that sound like words. I got a few up here. Snarp and bluck. These things have no meaning. They sound like words. And every day, he would pull out some note cards, write them down, set a metronome, tick, tock, and see how many he could remember in a given time period. He did this for one of his studies 15,000 times. Wow, jeez. But what he found was one of the most important and enduring findings in all of psychological research on memory and learning. What he discovered is the forgetting curve. Basic idea of the forgetting curve is that as soon as you learn something, you're forgetting it at an exponential rate. You're already forgetting what we talked about like 10 minutes ago. That's just the way that the mind works. You learn something and you start forgetting it. But what Ebbinghaus found is that if you study it over time, the rate at which you forget, it's not as steep. It starts to get flatter and flatter and flatter until you actually start to remember what you learned. That's really powerful. It says that if you want people to retain what they learn, you have to schedule time for them to review it a few minutes later, hours later, days later, weeks later. Otherwise, they're just going to forget it right when they learn it. It's just like in one year, out some other, it's just gone. So this forgetting curve brings into the idea that if you want people to learn, make sure that you have a strategy for helping them retain. Because if you don't remind people, it's gone. It's just like, see you later. That's it. Okay, so how much can retention help? If you start scheduling when people review, after they learn something, if you say, all right, we're going to go back and revisit this, how much can that make a difference? There have literally been hundreds of studies on this, all of which find that it's like a big difference. I'm just going to highlight one that was published in the Journal of Experimental Psychology, Learning, Memory, and Cognition. This was helping people learn Swahili words, so they had no background. There weren't a lot of students at the university that spoke Swahili, but when they used spaced repetition, which means that they learned things spaced out over time, they were able to remember over the long term better than if they just learned it up front. They were able to have a 200% improvement in long-term retention. That is huge. And you're like, why does this not happen in classrooms? Like, for decades, people have known about this. I'd love to say this is like just new, but no, people have known about this for decades. What happens is that it's so difficult for teachers to keep track of what everybody learned and what everybody, and when they all learned it and when they're about to forget it, that it's just like almost impracticable for teachers to do it when you have more than one student. But for software, it's really easy to keep track of everything that people learned and schedule a personalized review for them over time so that they can retain it. And this we thought was one of the biggest things that we could do to help people learn languages faster. Okay, those are the ideas for effectiveness. Let's go into engagement. How do you get people, this is like, again, you might have the greatest content in the world, but if people don't come back to it, especially in this age where people have choices, a lot of education in the past, and still some people have like mandatory education, but in the future, I think people have more choice and they won't tolerate things that are too boring and that don't keep them engaged. They'll just go elsewhere. So a big question for anybody that has responsibility for teaching others, or for anybody who wants to take a class, is how to find things that are engaging. Here's some ideas that we'll go through. 1 is the interest curve. 2 is this idea of flow. 3 is surprises. 4 is community. And 5 are habits. I'm going to go through the main ideas for these. Okay. So the interest curve. You see the interest curve from Shakespeare to Spider-Man to Halo. It's all throughout great entertainment. And why do you look for great entertainment? Well, these are things that people are paying money to see, that they're doing in their free time. It's things that people find really engaging. So what can we learn from things that people find really engaging? I mean, by its definition, this is entertainment. And so, what can we learn from it? Most great entertainment follows what's called the interest curve. And the way that works is that if you think about the entertainment experience over time, what often happens is that right when it starts, there's a hook. You can think to pick your favorite movie. There's probably something really interesting that happens right at the start. Or in Shakespeare play, they might tell you this person died and we need to figure out why. Everything starts with a hook. But then there's a valley that lets you learn more about the characters, more about the background plot, more of kind of the nuts and bolts that are going to build the foundation to sustain your engagement over time. And things usually follow this kind of crescendo of like big event, little letdown, big event, little letdown to the climax. So how does this relate to learning? Well, in any class or in any learning experience, map the experience to the interest curve. Ask yourself, is there a hook? Is there something to get people interested up front? And does it build over time after 10 minutes? Is there another kind of conflict or climax? Is there another kind of way to open up mystery and spike up the interest? It's a really useful tool for thinking about how people's interest is going to go over time. Okay, flow. Angry Birds. How many people played Angry Birds? Yeah, wow, that's a lot. Okay, how many people have ever gotten addicted to Angry Birds and played it for just hours and hours and hours? Okay, so some people that play Angry Birds get this kind of addiction where they're just like totally focused and have to beat all the levels, and they enter this state where you kind of lose track of time and you're really engaged. And this has been studied a lot, and it's this idea of flow. And there are 4 characteristics, and if you're building a product that wants to educate and engage people, try to think about flow as having clear goals. So in Angry Birds, it's like you got to kill the pigs. No distractions. All you can do is just like launch the bird and kill the pigs. There are no distractions. 3, you get feedback. Every time you send that bird flying through the air, you know exactly how many pigs you got. You know exactly what happened to each structure. Very clear feedback on how you did. And 4, and this is really, really important because, again, one of my theories on boredom is that it's because you're not challenging, you're not challenged at the right level, is that for flow to occur, you have to be continuously challenged. And Angry Birds does this in 2 ways. First, as you go through levels, they get increasingly difficult. And if you're already kind of good for the first levels, they give you a score from 1 star to 3 stars so that everything can be challenging no matter whether you're a beginner or whether you're more intermediate or advanced. And this is really, really important for helping people get in this state of flow. It's that you're always at the right level of challenge as they go through the program. All right, surprises. So surprise, I was surprised at how important surprises are. So surprises are actually kind of at the root of a lot of entertainment. It's at the root of humor, it's at the root of fun. What separates something that's just kind of pleasurable, like you're kind of like enjoying a meal or you're reading a book, from something that's really, truly fun, is often the element of surprise. There's this joke that's like, oh, I didn't think it was going to go that way. Or there's this like twist in the plot, or you're playing a game and there's some like sweet animation or sound effect. Or don't underestimate the power of surprise when teaching people things, because it's one of the best ways to get them engaged and smiling and having fun. 2 things about surprises. 1, trying to increase the value of the surprise. So you can have a surprise like it's a big reveal, but if people don't care, that's really not that valuable. So like if you're going to have like a great image, maybe the surprise. Well, make the image really great rather than just like kind of great, because the value of the surprise really matters. And then the second is try to keep them variable in the reward. So people have this natural proclivity to like randomness in their rewards. There's this study about squirting sugar water in people's mouths, and if you kind of alternate between regular water and sugar water at a predictable rate, people are like, well, that's not very enjoyable. But if you do it at a random rate, they're like, oh, I love that sugar water. And it's the same amount of sugar. All that happened was that went from like normal to random. So variable reward can be really important. Okay, community. If you look at things that help people change their behavior, and often education is about changing behavior. A lot of people think about, like, sometimes people have big dramatic changes when there's a big life event, like they move or a new job or something like that. As often as that occurs, there's also big life changes when people find new communities. And this can be, you see it in studies of obesity can actually spread through social networks, like who you hang out with. I really like the definition of community that's just focused on people having shared interests, shared goals, shared purpose, and getting to know each other over time. It can be a really powerful way of thinking about community. Try to think about, how can you build a community around the education that's trying to occur. And then finally, habits. I am constantly amazed at how many things happen in life where we just don't even think about it. Brushing your teeth, tying your shoe, walking to the metro. I am constantly doing things without thinking about it, and I'm doing them completely out of habit. if you want people to kind of change their behavior, one way to think about it is to try to build new habits. And habits often have a cue, a routine, and a reward afterward. And it can be a really powerful way to get people to practice regularly or to go to the community regularly. Habits can be a really influential way of changing behavior. Skip this example real quick. Okay, so how did we, there's a lot of ideas. And I guess what I did in this presentation is take years of reading lots of books and then distilling it down and trying to share in a short period of time all these insights for what I think will help people learn. Here is how we actually did it. I'm going to go through how we did it for the effectiveness side of things. So first, planning. So remember, planning is about adapting the pace and letting people skip to the right level. We built our system, so that's this is a screenshot of Flencia. I'd love to do a demo, but I think you have to try it on your own afterward. So this is level 1. It's very easy for people to go to a level that's appropriate for them, given their background. It's very easy to change back and forth. If something you've already done is already there, you can easily go to a different level. But as important as anything is that as you're answering questions, this is a vocabulary question, as you're answering questions, we actually adapt the pace according to whether you get them right. So questions that you miss come back more often. Questions that you get right, you get through quicker. So people that know a topic fairly well or really well can go through quite quickly. People that need more time, it adapts the pace and gives them more practice as they go. One other point on the planning is that if you look at this little diagram, it's a cycle where when you want people to retain things, it actually influences your planning. Because when someone comes to you and says, I'm ready to learn and ready to study, you might think, well, is it time for them to study something new, or is it time for them to review things so that they retain what they already learned? And here's a quick screenshot of when you log in, and you've already gone through things that you did a few days ago or a few weeks ago, and we say, it's now time for you to review so that you remember them. This is our smart review. And we'll often encourage people and nudge them toward doing a review with this announcement at the top. And we'll remind them that it can improve their long-term memory up to 200%, a little nudge to say it's actually worth your time to review. And it's really effective at helping people retain what they learned in earlier lessons. Okay, the learning. So remember, we have simple, unexpected, concrete, credible, emotional stories. How do you get that into language learning, which for a lot of people is just like vocab and some verb tables? So how do you incorporate this idea into language learning? So what we did is that we created really interesting dialogues with characters and stories and twists. And when we introduce new concepts, we do it in the context of language that has real stories behind it and is a lot more interesting for people to learn from. We also included culture. So culture is so fascinating to learn about new cultures. And we did it with something a little unexpected. So this isn't just kind of like Day of the Dead in Mexico. It's not like the same thing you see in everything. We did kind of what are the interesting aspects of culture. So there's a slide about how many kisses are appropriate in different Spanish-speaking countries. Everybody gets a little confused when you're American and you go into a Spanish-speaking country and you're like, okay, how do I kiss? So one side, two sides. We just lay it out for you. In Spain, you got 2 kisses. Bolivia, there's no kisses. So we try to explain to people these really important cultural elements that are a little bit unexpected for a language learning program, but actually quite relevant when you go meet and talk to real people. Finally, even for things that are just kind of like practicing, we thought we'd put in some more interesting pictures. So if the dress doesn't look good, you want to know how to say that. And so we kind of spice it up with some interesting pictures that you're going through and doing the practice. All right, so practice, we actually built, practice, the idea of 10,000 hours, the idea of how people build expertise, we spent so much time on helping make sure that there was a great experience for people to practice. We built tons and tons of different ways for people to practice, and throughout all of it, we want to make sure it's focused, that you get feedback on how you did, and that it's on the frontier of what you're capable of. So we've got all these question types. You got multiple choice with images. You've got sentence builder where the words are flying in. You're building sentences. Things where you got to listen and it's dictation. You got to make sure you can hear what people are saying. You practice your listening comprehension. But But we also built the ability for people to translate open-ended full sentences, which is really critical for putting together the language. So I think a lot of people have learned languages. You come away and you're like, I know these vocabulary words, I know these verb tables, but I'm not really good at actually putting together in sentences and speaking with people. So we created one of the most advanced ways of giving people feedback and letting them practice on full sentence communication. So for this simple sentence, the concert is at 8 p.m., which is in the context of our thing, an answer to the question, when is the concert? Here are 13 different ways of saying that translation correct. And when you answer this question, how do you say the concert's at 8 p.m. in our system, we can give you immediate feedback on whether you got it right or wrong for all 13 of those ways. But we took it to another level where we don't just tell you whether you got it right or wrong. We analyze at the semantic and syntactic level why you made a mistake. And we can remind you when you're doing open-ended practice about what it is that you made the mistake on. This is so powerful. In this example, it's like you made a mistake with the masculine and plural nature of the noun, or you made a mistake with the adjective. And we can analyze your result specific to you and give you that kind of concrete feedback, which is so critical for doing that deliberative practice. Remember the penny example? Where you go from, I told you after that first one whether you got it right or wrong, but it was only after the feedback that it really stuck with you and that you got it. And so this is why we spent so much time on giving really concrete feedback to people so that they can help, learn the topic and move on. We also can kind of inline do verb tables that are very specific to the mistake you made and the verb that you're practicing. Okay, retention. So remember Herman Ebbinghaus and this forgetting curve? We built into the Smart Review the ability to keep track of everything that people learn and schedule individual reviews that are dynamic and vary based on things that you're getting right or things that you're getting wrong, so it's totally tailored to you. The result is that when you go through our program, you really learn and you really remember, and then you can really use the language. That's what we're really going for. I'll end with this. So getting to this point took us a lot of feedback. We've had a lot of work, a lot of research and development, a lot of attempts to try things and figure out what worked and what didn't. One thing that I think is so important is building in ways of getting this constant improvement cycle into your products or into your course or into your teaching. So for us, we get an incredible amount of user feedback from we have a chat on the site so you can ask questions. We get emails. I probably answered 10 or 15 emails today from people. We get ratings. So, in education, perhaps the most you may have ever seen in a class on education might be like a course evaluation at the end. We ask people to rate our lessons basically every 5 minutes at a very micro level, 1 to 5 stars. Tell us how we did. We've got over 10,000 ratings just in our beta on our lessons. And this allows us to do incredible feedback on, how did it go? Let's improve it and make it better for the areas that people struggled with or they found too boring. We get great feedback on this. We also do surveys after people have experience trying out the product. We also use user behavior data. We've got site analytics, funnels about where people drop off or get confused. We've got retention data on how long people stick with it, how much they engage with the product. And we've got answer data, which is just phenomenal. We have over 500,000 answers to questions just in our beta over the last few months. What this allows us to do is see where people struggle. What type of mistakes are they making? How do we need to go back and improve the way that we taught based on the things that we're seeing that people did when they practiced and gave answers? It's an incredibly powerful way of kind of grading yourself on the quality of your teaching, is to see whether people could actually do it when they went to practice it. So how's this turned out? We are launching this publicly next Wednesday, but already we've gotten so many emails from people that have signed up and used the product. It's just amazingly encouraging. We've had people say that it's, when I took a very similar section in my class, I bombed it. It is not that yours is easier, it's that you made it easier to learn. Thank you. the rate of learning is far better than I expected. This one I was like, yes, that's exactly what we were going for with effectiveness. It's the rate of learning. I'm extremely impressed with the feedback loop that has been designed into the software. Annie in California, I love the practice. Fluentia makes it fun and stimulating. Sharon in South Carolina, I've never learned Spanish before and the course is definitely meeting my needs. It makes learning fun. I love it so far. And Cliff in Canada, he said the way the Spanish is presented makes it easy to progress. The review sessions are challenging and interesting. He likes the review. He likes that it's coming back later. We asked people how many people, there's this idea of the Net Promoter Score. How likely are you to recommend this product to a friend or colleague? We took it another step further. We asked people, have you recommended it to a friend? And in our survey of users, 65% said they actually had recommended it. That was amazing. That's like more than half of people actually recommended it to somebody. I'm going to end with a story. We have users that are over 80 years old learning Spanish on our program. We have people that are professionals, people doing it for travel, people doing it for fun, people that want to keep their mind sharp for school, all over the spectrum, young, old, 144 countries people have already signed up. It's crazy. But here's a story of Danny. Danny is a fifth grader in Arlington. Actually, he was a fifth grader when he started as one of the first beta testers for Fluentia. He began practicing in the middle of April. I said he played on Fluentia. He really enjoyed it. He did it of his own free will. He just loved learning Spanish. He did a few hours each week, and he took a placement test in August to see how much he had learned over the 4 months that he had been practicing on Fluentia. The Arlington school system evaluated on reading, listening, speaking, all these aspects of language learning. And they said that he was ready to go into Spanish with sixth graders who had been taking Spanish since kindergarten. Wow, that's people that have been studying Spanish in school for 6 years. And Danny, by practicing on his own for just 4 months, a few hours a week, was at that level. And she added, and his sentence construction is excellent, which I was like, yes, that's what we spent so much time on. That's great. So our hope with Fluentia is that we can reach more people and provide a better way to learn Spanish, that people can have great success stories like Danny, practicing on their own, and that they can do it because they really love it, because it's fun. At its core, learning is a lot of fun, and I think that there's a really bright, future in people learning online, and I hope some of these ideas can help people learn Spanish, and maybe you can bring them into your own context and help people learn, whatever you're helping teach in your environment. So thank you.